Good evening, you're watching News Mongolia on MNB World. I'm your host, Erndala Inhamotlan. For our top stories, Minister of Labor and Social Protection highlights employment challenges for people with disabilities. This year, potato and vegetable production in Mongolia has increased by 30% and 15% respectively. The President of Mongolia visits the Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Light Industry in Darkhan City. The Mongolian government, in partnership with Japan International Cooperation Agency and other international organizations, is receiving a final report on a 5 to 6 year project to promote employment opportunities for people with disabilities, designed to strengthen Mongolia's system for supporting people with disabilities. The report has revealed significant challenges ahead. Today, we're receiving a report on the project successfully implemented over the past 5 to 6 years by JICA, the International Cooperation Organization of the Japanese government, and other international organizations. The project focused on supporting employment for people with disabilities and strengthening the national support system. The number of people with disabilities in Mongolia compared to the total population is relatively high. Although we have a population of 3.5 million, the number of people with disabilities has reached 112,000, which is comparable to the population of Hufsgul province. Therefore, we must protect the rights of these 112,000 individuals, ensuring their rights to education, development, access to healthcare, rehabilitation, employment, and their ability to live independently in society. It is essential for us to establish a system that facilitates these rights. Among the 112,000 people with disabilities, 93,000 are of working age, between 15 and 63-year-old. However, only 15,000 are currently employed, which is a small number. In other countries, the employment rate for people with disabilities is at least 30%. In our country, it is only 15%, which is half that of other nations. In the future, we must regularly measure and report on the employment rate of people with disabilities. Furthermore, we need to introduce the International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health methodology to assess the loss of work capacity for people with disabilities in Mongolia. Based on this, we must create a national system that supports employment opportunities for people with specific types of disabilities, such as visual, auditory, mobility, intellectual, or multiple disabilities. This system should help restore their abilities and provide opportunities for skill development, enabling them to return to the workforce. With the assistance of Asian Development Bank, we've established disability centers in 6 provinces and a well-equipped center in Ulaanbaatar. However, this project is not just about building facilities. The most important task of the report we're receiving today is preparing people with disabilities for employment, restoring their lost abilities, and expanding job opportunities tailored to their specific disabilities. We're currently training national instructors to address this issue, which is highly significant. Mongolia now has around 200 trainers, which is a great achievement. These trainers will continue to offer short-term training and internships tailored to the specific needs of people with disabilities, preparing them for sustainable employment. This will establish a national system for providing stable jobs for people with disabilities. Mongolia's agricultural sector has seen significant growth this year, with potato production up by 30% and vegetable production rising by 15%. These increases are the results of strategic efforts to boost crop yields and implement sustainable farming practices. We are working on combining agriculture and intensive livestock farming in the central region. Looking ahead, we are planning to cultivate fodder crops on about 200,000 hectares of land, increase the crop rotation, and implement measures to protect soil fertility. This goes together with establishing forest belts around agricultural fields and promoting the proper use of fertilizers. Furthermore, we are focusing on seed variety improvements, working to develop new seed varieties, and establishing a sustainable seed production system. We are also organizing activities aimed at increasing the production and supply of potatoes, vegetables, and fruits, as well as boosting their consumption. Notably, this year, potato production has increased by 30% and vegetable production by 15% compared to last year. Moreover, greenhouse farming and fruit cultivation have been growing steadily year after year. To support the production of fruits, we are also setting up seedling nurseries in various regions to promote the industrial cultivation of fruits. President Hursuh Okhna visited the newly relocated Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Light Industry of Mongolia in Darkhan City on October 20th, following his participation in the Golden Autumn 2024 Harvest Festival. During his visit, President Hursuh engaged in discussions with ministry officials, focusing on strategic planning for the food, agriculture, and light industry sectors.
Key discussions focused on the progress of the food supply and security national movement, the food revolution, and the White Gold National Program, programs initiated by the President. Minister Inkbayır Jatamp highlighted that relocating the ministry to Darkhan will centralize agricultural investments, promote food and light industry clusters, and increase arable land by as much as 200,000 hectares. The food supply and security movement aims for Mongolia to meet domestic demands for 19 key food products within 5 years and ultimately become a food exporter. To support this goal, the state Grid Horol has allocated 1.7 trillion Mongolian tugruks over 5 years, assigning specific tasks to the government. As part of the regional development strategy, which designates Darkhan, Siling, and 2 provinces as a sub-region for diversified agriculture and industry, the ministry's relocation is underway. The first phase has transferred key personnel along with the Mongolian Agricultural Corporation and the Mongolian Agricultural Commodity Exchange to Darkhan City.
Now let's take a look at currency exchange rates provided by the Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at foreign news provided by our international partner agencies. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday welcomed participants of a BRICS summit in Kazan, including Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Kremlin hopes to turn the 3-day meeting into a rallying point for defying Western influence in global affairs. It also offers a powerful way to demonstrate the failure of US-led efforts to isolate Russia over its action in Ukraine. Kremlin Foreign Affairs advisor Yuri Ushakov called it the largest foreign policy event ever held by Russia, with 36 countries attending and more than 20 of them represented by heads of state. The alliance that initially included Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa has expanded rapidly to embrace Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Malaysia have formally applied to become members, and a few others have expressed interest in joining. Observers see the BRICS summit as part of the Kremlin's effort to showcase the support from the global south amid spiraling tensions with the West while expanding economic and financial ties. Proposed projects include the creation of a new payment system that would offer an alternative to the global bank messaging network, SWIFT, and allow Moscow to dodge Western sanctions and trade with partners. Putin, who will hold about 20 bilateral meetings on the sidelines, conferred with Xi, Modi, and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on Tuesday ahead of the summit's opening. Protesters calling for the release of hostages from Gaza gathered outside a Tel Aviv hotel on Tuesday as U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Israeli officials and relatives of U.S.-Israeli dual citizens hostages.
We're hearing that they're trying to figure out who are the forces in Hamas right now that are capable of making decisions, and then try to work with them a deal that is going to bring them home.
Blinken arrived in Israel earlier on Tuesday for his 11th visit to the region since the outbreak of the Israeli-Hamas war. He is expected to meet with top officials as the United States looks to revive ceasefire efforts after the killing of top Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. But so far, none of the warring parties appear to be backing down on long-standing demands. Israel is still at war with Hamas more than a year after the militant group's October 7 attack, and with Hezbollah in Lebanon, where it launched ground invasion earlier this month. Israel is also expected to strike Iran after its ballistic missile attack on October 1st. The United States, Egypt, and Qatar have brokered months of talks between Israel and Hamas, trying to strike a deal in which the militants would release dozens of hostages in return for an end to the war, a lasting ceasefire, and the release of Palestinian prisoners. But both Israel and Hamas accused each other of making new and unacceptable demands over the summer, and the talks ground to a halt in August. Hamas says its demands haven't changed following the killing of Sinwar. President Joe Biden laid into his predecessor Donald Trump on Tuesday, declaring during a visit to New Hampshire that the former president is a genuine threat to democracy. During a speech in New Hampshire where Biden focused on prescription drug prices, he ended off his comments to suggest that world leaders are terrified of second Trump term. He said they often pull him aside at summits and quietly wonder what a Trump return to the White House will do to democratic rule around the world.
He won't even commit that if he loses this election, he'll go peacefully. He will not make that commitment. He talks about there being a bloodbath if he loses. These are words no president has ever used. No president ever used. And by the way, if you don't believe it now, you're going to learn if he wins. It's a serious, serious problem. So folks, the first point I want to make to you is we must win. We must win not only for ourselves, but for our children, and the children aren't even born yet. It makes a significant difference. The only value of being around a long time, I have more experience than any president in the history of the United States of America. I've gotten to know, literally, not figuratively, not make me good or bad, and I've gotten to know every major world leader personally over those years because of my involvement in American foreign policy. The rest of the world is scared to death of what's going to happen if he gets elected. Not a joke. Not a joke. Every one of these international meetings I attend, I get pulled aside as I walk out and say, you got to win. You got to win. My democracy is at stake, meaning their democracy. But I'm serious. He is a genuine threat.
Biden repeated those comments a short time later during remarks to campaign workers. He continued his broadsides against Trump, even saying at one point, "We've got to lock him up," which some Harris supporters have yelled of Trump during her rallies. He didn't mention Vice President Kamala Harris, who has replaced him at the top of the Democratic ticket. Instead, Biden further criticized Trump for bragging about being friends with Russian President Vladimir Putin and joked that Trump believes in the free press like I believe I can climb Mount Everest. He said Trump and supporters of his Make America Great Again movement have anti-democratic attitudes toward the way the Constitution functions and virtually no regard for the Constitution.
All these press people know the hell what they're talking about.
Republican vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance held a campaign rally in Tucson, Arizona on Tuesday. During the rally, Vance addressed the Arizona border and criticized the inflation and affordability crisis under Kamala Harris's leadership. With just over 2 weeks before the 2024 presidential election, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are hitting the campaign trail in strategic battleground states.
Now let's just talk about the economy for a little bit, and then I want to talk about the open border of Kamala Harris, because of course in Tucson we've got some of the biggest problems with the open border that we've had anywhere in our country. But think about how bad the inflation and affordability crisis has gotten under Kamala Harris's leadership. We've got average Arizona families are spending $1,000 more a month today to buy what they could have bought when Donald Trump was president.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Goodbye.